Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. The Republic F-105 Thunder Chief, better known as the Thud, was the most numerous fighter bomber in the US Air Force arsenal when the war in Southeast Asia escalated in 1965. By then, it was flying with 24 operational squadrons and 5 training units. Originally designed in the mid-1950s, the F-105's main job was to deliver a nuclear bomb from its internal bomb bay. To pull off this mission, it was built to fly low and fast, outrunning enemy interceptors. Still, it needed to defend itself, so it packed an internal 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon with over 1,000 rounds, enough for 10 seconds of sustained fire, and could also carry 2 AIM-9B Sidewinder missiles. However, by the 1960s, the F-105's role had shifted to conventional bombing, and that's where it saw most of its combat. The F-105D model with its advanced avionics gave the US Air Force a much-needed all-weather attack capability. Despite being focused on air-to-ground missions during the Vietnam War, Thud pilots still racked up a significant number of aerial victories. At times, the number of dogfights and victory claims against North Vietnamese fighters actually rivaled those of the F-4 Phantom, even though the Phantom's main job was combat air patrols or escort missions, and it could carry up to 8 air-to-air missiles. F-105 pilots claimed 1/5 of all MiGs shot down by the US Air Force during the Vietnam War, and all of these victories came in a relatively short span of just 18 months. By comparison, almost all other US Air Force victories, mostly by F-4 Phantoms, happened over 7.5 years, with a long lull in the middle when there were few engagements with MiGs. So, what explains these stats? For starters, every one of the Thud's victims was a MiG-17. While F-105 pilots did have a few chances to take on the faster MiG-21s, those opportunities were relatively rare. MiG-21s usually relied on hit-and-run tactics. They'd launch surprise attacks, fire their missiles, and then quickly disengage, getting out of range of the F-105's guns and missiles. MiG-17s, on the other hand, were slower and used different tactics. They mainly targeted F-105s, aiming at the very least to force American strike formations to jettison their bombs. For the North Vietnamese pilots, even making the Americans drop their bombs early was a win. Shooting them down was a bonus. One tactic the MiG-17 pilots used was to lure the fighter escort away, leaving the bombers unprotected. The US Air Force's rigid formation doctrine required all 4 fighters in a flight to stick together, with 3 supporting the leader. This made it easier for the Vietnamese to pull the escorts away from the strikers. Even though the F-105s were primarily bombers, they were also expected to protect themselves if needed. For example, the 388th Tactical Fighter Wing Operation Instructions stated, "Once the escort flight has engaged or has been separated for any reason, the strike force will assume its own escort responsibility. The strike force may move into a diamond formation, with number 4 flight assuming escort responsibilities. This escort flight still has the primary responsibility of bombing the target, but it's authorized to jettison ordnance and then engage for the purpose of aiding the rest of the force to hit the target." When you compare the 2 aircraft, it looks like the Soviet-designed MiG-17 had the edge. It was small, hard to spot, and much more maneuverable than the F-105, especially at lower speeds. MiG pilots fought close to their home bases and could count on better ground radar guidance than their American counterparts. The MiG-17 packed a punch with a single 37mm and 2 23mm cannons, delivering an impressive 35 pounds, almost 16 kilograms of ammunition per second. But accuracy suffered due to a primitive gun sight and heavy vibrations when firing. F-105 pilots had their own aiming challenges. Their radar in theory gave accurate gun sight information, but it didn't work well below 10,000 feet. Even worse, switching from bombing mode to guns air mode was complicated, requiring no less than 5 head-down switch changes. It was easy to lose visual contact and miss a shot. In fact, at least 10 F-105 victory claims were made without switching to air-to-air mode. Pilots simply aimed along the nose of the aircraft, sometimes using the pitot tube as a makeshift sight. The MiG-17 was much more maneuverable than the F-105, but only up to a point. At high subsonic speeds and low altitudes, Its controls became extremely heavy. Pulling more than 2G was tough, so MiG pilots preferred to fight at lower speeds. Generally, MiG pilots were less experienced than their F-105 opponents. Many THAAD pilots were Korean War veterans, but their recent training had focused on nuclear and conventional strike missions, with little time spent on air-to-air tactics. The Korean War era fluid four formation, where three pilots mostly just kept up with the leader, was still standard for the US Air Force. These factors, along with predictable attack routes and times, certainly made the defender's job easier. The first clash between F-105s and MiG-17s happened on August 4, 1965 at Than Hoa. The MiG pilots surprised two slow, heavily loaded F-105s and shot them both down. Check out the earlier video for a detailed breakdown of that fight. It took over a year before THAAD pilots started striking back. The first alleged victory over a MiG-17 isn't officially confirmed, and details remain unknown. Some sources say that on May 10, 1966, an F-105 pilot shot down a MiG-17 after a 25-mile chase into Chinese airspace, but the incident was supposedly covered up for political reasons. The first confirmed F-105 kill came on June 29, 1966, during an attack on a POL site near Hanoi. Major Fred Tracy was attacked by a MiG-17 which damaged his F-105 and knocked out the afterburner, causing the MiG to overshoot. Tracy fired, saw his rounds hit, and watched the MiG disappear into a cloud. He never saw it crash, but intelligence reports claimed the wreckage was found, and Tracy was officially credited with the victory. However, North Vietnamese records don't show any losses in that fight. All their pilots reportedly returned to base. As Operation Rolling Thunder continued, F-105s kept running into MiGs, but their second kill didn't come until August 18, 1966. 16 THAADs from Korat, Thailand attacked a POL site north of Hanoi. The Iron Hand flight, call sign Honda, got separated while dodging a thunderstorm. The lead pair still found the SAM site target, but two missiles were fired at them. One exploded between the two F-105s, damaging the second aircraft. Honda 1, flown by Majors Robbie Robinson and Pete Tupraki, fired two Shrike missiles at the SAM site. Then, another F-105 flight warned them that two MiG-17s were closing in. Seeing MiGs in a SAM zone was unusual, but the North Vietnamese were clearly getting better at coordinating their air defenses. Major Kenneth Blank in Honda 2 heard his leader call for help. "Get the MiG off my ass." Blank told Robinson to brake left, putting himself behind the MiG-17, which was still firing at Honda 1. Blank, a Korean War veteran with 153 combat missions and about 600 hours in the F-105, found the weapon switch procedure too long. Instead, he closed in until the MiG filled his windscreen and fired 216 rounds. The MiG flipped over and crashed, witnessed by the Manila flight following behind. This time, Vietnamese records confirmed the loss. Dong Sai Hung in his book Combat in the Sky provides fewer details than usually, but he mentions that in the battles on 18 and 22 August, the 923rd Fighter Regiment Command ordered 4 flights with 2 MiG-17s each to take off. But during these battles, Senior Lieutenant Pham Thang Chung, a company's deputy commander, was killed. All told, F-105 pilots were credited with 27.5 kills during the Vietnam War, all between June 29, 1966 and December 19, 1967. Every victory was against the MiG-17, although about 10% of their shooting opportunities involved MiG-21s. In the same 18-month period, US Air Force Phantoms shot down fewer MiG-17s, just 21, but matched that number of MiG-21 kills. The Tud's record is impressive for a bomber whose pilots got little air-to-air training and were supposed to avoid enemy fighters whenever possible. By 1967, the VPAF was getting more experienced and better organized, and MiG fighters managed to shoot down at least 11 F-105s in that year. Still, this was only a fraction of the total F-105 losses. By 1970, more than half of all F-105Ds ever built had been lost in combat or accidents, making it the only US Air Force aircraft retired from frontline service due to attrition. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to see more F-105 aerial victory stories in the future. Thanks for watching Showtime 112.